Yeah,
There's one
yeah.
in the other room. Let me shut it off.
In the other room. That's an incredible mic.
That's a yeah. That's a boom box. That's just catching.
Is it
Weirdly,
off?
I've got one of these. Yeah, it is off. That's strange. I've got one of these
That's like
snowballs.
that way, like 10 feet.
So this thing here, right, cannot pick me up from like this distance.
Is this a mic?
But yeah. If the kids are screaming like upstairs, it picks them up. Like it's crazy. So I sort of stopped using it for a bit, but I'm sure like Windows definitely needs a lot more configurability when it comes to mic management. Like
Right,
for some
right.
reason, like when you buy a mic, they never come with any kind of like utilities to help you manage that thing or like configure it or in any way kind of like, I don't know, what's the best word? Equalize it, like you would do with a graphic equalizer on a.
You should try the Yeti mic. I'll send you
Yes,
one.
I've heard they're pretty good.
I'll send you one as a gift, so you could just,
Oh,
stop
thank you.
ruining my streams with your kids in the background. Just, ah, you know.
Yeah, I just use a webcam one because it's
Specifically
literally the
you.
best mic that I have.
Paul, would you use this? Would you use this?
What, a headset?
Astro 50?
Possibly. Yeah.
Okay,
I
okay.
I prefer these like in-ear ones because it's just,
Because your hair is so good, you want to show it to the world.
yeah, that's what it is.
You.
I don't like looking like a biker all day.
I don't know what happened to Joe, but he just got like 20 years younger.
Right? What is going on?
He turned into Brad Pitt overnight. Okay, so I don't know if any of you watched the Oscars yesterday. What was that all about?
Right?
Gee, dude, that
To,
was
to be fair, I mean, good on Will Smith for standing up to his wife, right?
yeah. If someone talks to my wife like that, that's it. You don't get to But I also wouldn't put my wife in a place where some other man would make comments about her. So it
I
goes
mean,
both
how
ways.
do you avoid a situation
You
like that?
can't. That's the problem. Like you never know. You could
Yeah.
be out. You could be out for dinner, and some jackass just shows up, be like, "Ah, look, you have eyes. Funny, right?" Or something like that. Yeah, people are so angry and they're pissed off and all that, but it seems like he had multiple incidents where he was making fun of Jada. So I don't know. It was all weird. You gotta give it to Chris Rock though, how he handled the situation. Like he handled it so good, people thought it was staged. Like
Yeah.
his reaction was so professional that people thought this is definitely staged. People were still laughing in the background until Will Smith just lost his mind and started telling him, "Keep my wife out of your mouth," and just completely lost it. Yeah, you know, and some of these things sometimes are bottled up, right? Just bottled up, just boom,
Yeah.
just comes in a moment. At least he won an Oscar, so that's good, right?
Finally. I mean, he's deserved Oscars for years. I thought he was brilliant in what was it?
I
That
Am
one with
Legend.
I Am Legend. That was it.
So
Yeah.
I Am Legend,
It's funny how you went straight to that one because that was the
because
exact
it's
movie I was thinking
legendary.
of.
Because
Yeah.
legendary. Did you see the alternative endings for I Am Legend?
Yeah. If you got like the Blu-ray edition, there was like 2 or 3 of them, wasn't there?
But
Yeah.
but even okay, Pursuit of Happiness, the movie called Seven Pillars of Wisdom or something like that, where he
Yeah.
basically donated all his organs. That was outstanding performance. Will Smith, also Independence Day. Independence Day
Yes.
was pretty good, you know. Uh, that
Gotta
that
get me
that.
one of these. That was brilliant.
Yeah, I have to say though, the speech in that movie was so kind of was so touching. It's like, we're not gonna go quietly into the
To
night.
the night.
We're not gonna fall without a fight. We will survive. That was hilarious. But yeah, I mean, he has a lot of performances. I thought he was pretty cool in Men in Black when he was playing with Tommy Lee
Ah,
Jones.
yeah.
But no credit for that.
The
Uh,
sign up process where he just drags the table across the floor, and all these like military specialists are like, dude, what? And he's just like,
I bet,
what?
I bet, I bet Will Smith would have loved to have one of these, neutralizers, memories just right after he smacked Chris Rock. He could have just, okay, I want everyone to look at this right now. And then he looks back at Chris Rock and he says, "You smacked yourself."
Brilliant.
Anyway, let's jump to business. Sam is on his way. He already have an invitation. So here's something I've been thinking about. First of all, sorry about Friday. I just, you never know how life looks like. Like this morning at 7 a.m., I was setting up a design and architecture meeting, and guess what happened? Windows decided to update. And it took way longer than it usually does. I have a 64 gig RAM rig with 3080 titanium graphic. There's no reason i9, the highest of the highest. This thing can fly, can levitate off the ground, right?
Maybe you can explain to me, or go over to the Windows team in Building 96 or whatever it is, right? And like, how do they figure out the progress on anything? Because I have never seen a progress bar served up by Windows that was actually accurate. Like, what? Like, when Windows tells me something is 99.9% done or 100% done, I'm like, yeah, it's only got a couple of hours left.
I'll tell you something. I'll tell you something for a fact. You can't actually predict the progress in anything that has direct impact with the hardware. You just can't.
You should be
Because
able
it's
to, though. You can
no,
benchmark it.
no, no, you can't, because there's so much variables than what you can actually censor. Like if you're relying on the internet connection and you're giving people estimates, right? That's a wild, wild card. Look at this thing in the background. It says OData Neo. I love that. Did you see that? Nice. I love that. That's beautiful. Oh man, that's really cool. How did you do that?
It's
Nice.
oh,
Oh, it's like letters. You slide in the letters. Oh, now you're unmuted. Now you're muted.
I keep forgetting. So
Uh,
yeah, it's just the little
you
letters.
slide. Oh, I love that. I gotta get me one of those. Just put it right there. Oh,
Is,
Data
is that
Nia.
one of those like desk lamp ones that lights up?
Yeah, unfortunately it's too bright. I have it setting back here.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's the good stuff.
I think I
Da-
picked it up at like the dollar store or something. So
yeah,
it's just
yeah,
it's just
That
white.
is bright.
that's just.
Like you can physically see it. It's just camera doesn't pick it up very well.
Nice.
Okay, thank you for doing this. I think that's pretty cool. So nice. I owe you all shirts that have the OData Neo, like the logo that says OData Neo, because we're now in this together, and we've been doing
Yeah.
this for a while. So we
Got to stop
gotta.
me wearing these.
You are currently too close to the wearer.
Yeah. I have one of those that says if you can read this, you're too close. What am I wearing here today? Oh, talk
Talk
nerdy to me.
dirty to me. I remember having this buddy of mine. His name was Mark Thorpe. Right? I don't know what Sam, this is not a flashing event. So keep your shirt. So I remember Mark Thorpe, one of my favorite friends. He's from Yorkshire, and he used to say, we British people, we no, he would say we English people, because he hated being called British, because that puts him in the same bucket as the Scots for some reason.
Can relate.
he would get so offended. He'd be like, "Don't call me British, British. Don't call me British." But anyway, the other thing that he would say is that he would say, "Oh, we only hug horses and dogs. We don't hug people."
Yeah.
Why would I? Like, I am a very big hugger. Like, Paul, if I meet you for the first time, expect a hug. That's how I deal with people, right?
Awesome.
But Mark would be like, listen, listen, you can't do that. I was like, yes, you do. Yes, you are. Like, what?
I've heard it's a very American thing to like just walk down the street and say hey to everybody. You do
Yeah.
that in England, people think you're weird.
Yep. Here in America, they do that. And also you'll find people smiling a lot in America because there's a lot of people here in America that don't speak English natively. So a smile is like a universal thing of saying I'm a friend,
Just
right?
being polite. Yeah.
And then when you go home, you get to say, "Oh, these freaking Arabs coming over our countries and
Ja-
taking our jobs."
I've seen a policeman in the UK actually threaten to arrest someone for simply smiling at them. That's just like how culturally odd it is around
What
here.
the hell? Why?
It's just because they look at you and they go, oh, "That's suspicious." Like nobody does that around here.
So in Russia, if you're smiling, people say you're a fool. You're like an idiot. And if you smile in your passport picture or your ID, they will tell you need a new take. The same thing now happens in Canada. If you smile,
I think
you should
that's
see.
mostly anyone in Europe.
Yep,
They
that's
don't like
just.
you smiling.
Yep.
You're not
Why?
allowed to on ID because it
Oh.
affects the results. Because
Your
people
results?
yeah,
Okay.
there's some weird thing about it, right? When they do like, so if they use your ID through like face tracking or whatever algorithms or whatever systems,
Yeah.
they say that your natural state of your face is not to smile. Like smiling requires effort.
But if you
So-
smile all the time, then also the natural state of your face is not. But that's true. I see where this is. I can see the reasoning behind it. But I'll tell you this one more thing though. You should see what people do here in their driver's license. They just go full on. What up?
They'll reject it if you try it over here. They
I
won't
know.
allow it.
Remember,
weird.
I lived in your country for a year. I know
Yeah.
exactly. But I have to say also that I do love older people in England. They're the nicest. They're mean and nice at the same time. I don't know how they do it. Like I would
Yeah.
go and say, I'm sorry, that I'm such a fool, and they would say, "Oh, you said it. I didn't." It's like,
Yeah.
they're mean and nice at the same time. Anyway, I love people in England. They're cool. Other than the folks that broke my teeth, it's all good. But other than that, yeah, the EDL, yeah. So okay, so let's get started. So here's the deal. The last time we talked about. I told you guys, okay, guys, I got it. I have an idea. Right? Let's just talk about this idea and see if it makes sense. So do you guys remember Paul a while back? He said we need to have some sort of conventions, right? And these conventions will be passed in, and these conventions will describe how you can operate based on a particular token. So remember back then I said you're a little ahead. You're all the way up there. We're still trying to get these tokens. So here's my thoughts. What I'm thinking. Let's just do this together and I'll tell you what my thought process is. And again, I apologize for the shift in timing. How do you guys like the standard community? Welcome to my club. Down there, that's my people. So okay, so here's what I think. So remember these tokens that we basically collected in here, right? In the implementation of the service, we basically went and said, okay, iterate. I don't think I have the latest. Give me a second. Let me pull the latest. It seems like an older version. A second there.
We may end up having to change the latest based on my last comment too, if we decide to include quotes in the test.
Yeah, let's see. The last commit here is merged tokenization. Did we okay, fail? That was Joe. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we have a failing test right now.
Okay, perfect, perfect, perfect. Yeah, and this is what inspired this conversation. So here's the deal. So for each one of these tokens, right, they need to have some sort of a convention, right? And the convention will tell us, whether how do we parse this guy? Like if we run into this guy, how do we proceed? The convention needs to honor two things, right? Number one, when to stop parsing for that token value. That's number one. Number two, what to ignore within that parsing process. For instance, back to Sam's point, if you have this single quote in here, right? That means as long as you're parsing, the parser might be confused that a single quote that's within the string itself is the ending quote. So it needs to understand that slash in escape character, sorry, slash backward slash single quote as an escape character within that string, right? So first of all, we just need to agree on this particular principle. This is a convention. So let me just go to the models area here and just, kind of visualize what I'm talking about. Let's see. I know you can't see the window that creates a new model, but that's okay. So I'm just gonna go here and say O token convention. Okay, let's just start from the model, and things are gonna be so much easier from there. So here's the deal. What we can do as a rule, we can go and say, first of all, we need to identify, whether that token that we're in is a beginning of something or it's independent. So a space is an independent separator token. An open parentheses is a beginning or a continuous token, right? If you look at Sam's existing code, you'll see that when he's parsing, he has a little method at the bottom that says continue or go next. So that's him saying, no, this token requires a little bit more parsing, right? So we could go here and do this Boolean and I say has closing token. And then we could go and say, here's my closing token look like, closing token value. So if you're describing this, and I'm just gonna, do this in here just so people can see, public class whatevs, and here is void foo. My rule would look something like this. I would go and say, well, here's my rule, my convention equal new O token convention. And I know your brains are just starting, like restarting. You're just booting up the system, so that's okay. You'll get warmed up and you'll start thinking with me out loud. So basically, first of all, we can define the token itself. I can go here and say, token, and then this is the rest of that. So, okay, so the token itself would be something like this. Something like this. And then you can go and say, well, does it have a closing token? The answer is yes. And then the last thing here, we can go the closing to, it's crazy. Did you see what the AI just did? Did you guys see this? What the actual, oh man, that's weird. That's very creepy and weird. So anyway, so this is what I'm thinking. So when the parser is starting, when it runs into a token like this, it knows that it needs to continue until it hits the closing token for that, unless that token is escaped.
So your token convention has to identify if it allows escape characters,
Yes,
and then what the escape character prefix is.
I like that. So let's see. So you're
Or if there's
thinking
more than one escape character prefix.
escape. Is there any more than one? I don't think there is.
For character, it's /, but if for whatever reason we decide to have this extensible, you could have some other type, a dash dash or something like that.
Okay. Let's just get all of this out there, and then we'll so Boolean allow escape characters.
Escaped characters.
Escaped. Okay, so now your convention would look something like, let's see.
I mean, why don't we do this and create a string literal convention? Because that's an easy one to just throw out there.
Like what? Like what do you
String
mean?
literal would be single quotes, right?
Oh, you mean like an
Like,
enum type?
Well, no, you're doing O token convention, and in this case, it's for parentheses. So
You're
whatever
saying,
would be in the middle. Like just create a string literal O token convention, and then where you have token and closing token, it'd just be single quotes. And
Oh,
then
like
we can actually utilize this if we deem it useful.
like this? I'm not sure I
Yep.
understand. Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
just like that. Yeah, and then if we decide this works, then we don't have to make the string literal one if we're already doing it right now.
Like this.
Yep. Yeah, that works.
It will be like
If
this.
we're talking about characters, should that be a string or a char? Because that would actually be 2 slashes. No,
We'll
that's
we'll
one. That's one slash. You're correct. Sorry. Getting crazy.
That's all right. You're fine. So let's try it. Let's just try it with one that is not. So one that is not would look something like, a different convention. And this convention would be a token that is a space, just an empty space, right? And you're basically going and saying, there is no closing token, so this one is null. And then has closing token false. Allow escaped characters. It's not relevant. And then you're basically going and saying escape tokens, there's nothing here for you. Like this guy is also going to be null. So the parser now knows is the rule for this token. So every time you want to introduce a new token to be parsed, the parser needs to go and see, what the rule is for this guy to parse through. What do you guys think? We're gonna refactor this. This is just brain dump. We're just storming, kind of just here's what's out there. What do you think, Sam?
So when I first envisaged conventions, my thinking was you've got your tokens, and the idea was that you were processing sets of them based on effectively like a kind of rule. So you could say, by pattern matching a set of tokens, you could say, hey, these are viable to be processed. So in this case, I would say,
Oh, you want to take this out? Go ahead.
So tokenization, as I see it, is kind of like, first we break it down so we can add the metadata to figure out how to apply the conventions, if that makes sense. So I would see tokenization as happening before any conventions could apply, if that makes. Am I kind of getting anywhere here? So when we're talking about like scopes or literals, right? Those are effectively child scenarios of the set that you've already got that you probably want to kind of like build out as a future post tokenization servicing thing. So we might decide, for example, that as a first pass we just identify all of the individual tokens, and then as a second pass we then say, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to post process, I don't know, if you've got multiple white space characters, you turn them into a single white space token with all of those characters in it. But that would be a convention that you'd apply, if that makes sense.
I was hoping that's what we would do, but then we ran into the scenario where you have this situation where we say, wait a second, select filter equal name equal Sam. And we said this is a token.
It's a literal token.
Yeah. So we're in this like weird context where what I originally envisaged would be the usage for conventions has actually been pulled into this stage rather than being a future thing. So I'd sort of anticipated that instead of there being a literal value, there would be like, a quote token. There would then be like a word token. Then there would be another quote token. And there would be some kind of convention processing that would say, by convention, we treat this whole thing as being a string literal. But that would happen after tokenization. But I'm not saying my vision was correct or anything.
No,
I'm just saying
your
this
vision.
is how I thought of it.
No, your vision is correct. I want it to be that way, but then we continue to run into the situation where, do you remember the little diagram that we created? Let me see if I can find that diagram for you. The diagram where we said, wait a second, but there is things that are not really tokens because like a word, when you say this is a word, right? Do you remember the scenario where we basically went and said, hold on a second, what about a scenario where Sam is like this? Right? So this makes this whole piece, not this one, not the closing or opening single quotes, but this whole piece here makes it one token.
But you need the token first in order to apply the convention, is what I'm kind of getting at. Because you basically need to say, hey, if you've got a token set that follows this convention, then you take those 3 tokens, say, and merge them into one token. You say that's a new token of type string literal.
That's what Joe proposed, and I don't know if I go behind that. Joe, are you still backing up that just get rid of the single quotes and just say this is a value? Is this your thing?
Because that's until we have some other reason to identify a quote as a single thing, that is our value.
What
Right?
if I told you I need to be able to kind of reverse and reconstruct my original query back to the way it was, and this seems to be a little loosey? Well, it's not really loosey because if you get,
it'll come back
I wouldn't get rid of
them.
them. I wouldn't
That's
get
right.
rid of them. I'm saying I would merge them into a single token that contained all 3 of the values from the original source tokens. I wouldn't remove anything because my original intention, I would still say, would still apply here. If you've got an array of tokens and you serialized all of the values from all of those, you should get the original thing, even if you've manipulated them in some way. However, that may not hold true further down the chain, depending on how we're deciding we're going to process this.
Yeah, I also want to point out that this is very specific to the single quote scenario because in open closing parentheses, we really don't care. We just treat them completely as different values.
Open and closing, I think, should be their own, just because when we go to translate tokenization into the next level, the tree or whatever we decide to do, you're going to need to know that to know your nesting, how to nest.
Right.
But the string literal itself, we don't have that problem unless we start getting into interpolation. And until we do that, there's no reason to separate them.
Well, what if my string literal contains an expression? Because for some reason I want to pass a literal expression to the server.
It's still a literal. Yeah, he'll tell you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we can have a string literal token that provides the tokenization of its string later on. Just right now, I don't see any benefit to pulling the quotes out as their own token. There's no benefit right now, other than just creating more work for us.
Sam, any thought? Stop doing work, son. Stay with me. Go ahead. What do you think, Sam?
No, I try to play something. You can go with I trust listening. Well,
Okay.
Yeah, but in my opinion, so single quote wraps the value. The whole is a whole thing. We can't separate them into parts.
So do you want to treat it as 3 tokens or 1 token?
One token. One token.
1 token. Okay. Okay, I see you. His internet is still kind of weird, but yeah. Go ahead,
Later,
Sam.
when you revert or combine them together to finalize, from the OData query token, something like this, to generate the query string. So if you separate them into 3 parts, you can't understand the logic. You can't understand how to generate the query string again. Because they are separate. There's no meaning. There's no structural information for you to regenerate the query operation string again.
Right.
Okay. Because there's a different meaning.
Yeah, his internet is just.
Have you moved back to Dubai again, Sam? Or are you just routing your internet through
Sam,
there?
your internet is really cutting out a lot.
I don't know. Because today
Are you home? Are you home? Are you home, Sam?
let me turn off other TV or internet. Give me a second.
Just reset your router, okay? Okay, while Sam is doing this, here's what I'm thinking. This case that we're talking about seems to be very exclusive to the single quote. It doesn't exist anywhere else in any case that we know of. If everywhere else we
Sorry
will
for
just
my bad
tokenize.
network.
No worries.
I
Okay.
guess my difficulty has been in understanding the difference between what's considered to be sort of standard convention in OData and what is considered to be standard convention when processing URLs.
Mm,
And my difficulty has been in trying to get us to pin down what the scope is here. Are we just taking any string potentially, or are we assuming that the string has come from a URL query? And in the event that it has come from a URL query, there's a set of potential tokens that are not covered within the OData spec. So is there some weird blurry line here that falls outside of OData but inside URLs, or outside of URLs even, that we need to account for? Or do we just blanket say, hey, if we see a character, for example, that falls outside of the ASCII set, which to my knowledge is like the maximum set that can be used in URLs,
hmm
what do we do? Do we just crash? Do we throw an exception saying, hey, this is invalid input? And
There's
then,
also, Paul, there's also invisible open closing tokens.
Unicode, yeah.
yeah,
Like,
this is what I mean. That
no,
they're
no, no,
Unicode.
no, wait. In OData, you are expected that if you get a value like this, let me just show you. If you are getting a value like this, it needs to understand that there is an invisible begin and end token in there.
Yeah. I mean, putting that aside, that's OData needs to understand how to interpret a GUID, right, as an actual value type. So it's
Yeah,
treating that like, say, for example, an integer.
I got a
treating-
question that might
yeah,
kind of put us in the right path here.
go.
Given that we have a string, how can you tell that any subpart of that is a string or something else?
Yes.
In this case, this is a GUID. We physically can read it as a GUID, and we can also interpret it as a GUID using GUID.parse. Unfortunately, you don't have that option with string. So you have to have a character that lets you know that the next part of that is going to be a string.
Yeah.
And
So,
that string is the
This is where
identifier.
conventions are useful, right? Because what we're saying is a convention would help us identify when we have.
that's exactly, yep, that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it
Yeah.
is.
So my thinking was the way that this would work is you'd first tokenize and you'd get a discrete set of these tokens, and then you'd run a second pass where you apply your conventions and you combine some of those tokens into different tokens. So the first pass, for example, for a GUID, you might return, say, hey, this is a word, this is a hyphen, this is a word, this is a hyphen.
Oh,
Yeah.
you want to do it this way? What are you gonna
And
do with
then,
this? What are you gonna do with this one then?
so in that you might return, hey, there's a quote here, there's a word, there's a quote, right? And then
What if it's like this, Paul?
the tokenization service would then process that. So you could have quote and escaped quote as some separate character or something, I don't know. Or you just treat in the first pass a backslash as its own token. You say, hey, there's a backslash in the URL.
I see what you're saying. Oh,
All you're
like that.
stating is to just separate things into chunks of characters.
Yeah,
Whether they're one character or more character, you still have to go behind them. Like, you still have to define whatever rules makes that chunk of characters, right?
yeah, but
Yeah.
he's saying that tokenization service shouldn't care.
I'm saying the first pass should just be, hey, just tell me what's in there and add some context to it.
So
Then the second pass should be to apply conventions to add some more smarts to that, to say, hey, actually, I've gone a step further here.
So Joe, just to clarify, Paul is basically saying here's his tokenization output out of this. It will be $ filter, and then an equal sign, and then a name, and then a space, and then an EQ,
Cool.
and then another space, and then a single quote, and then you will have Sam, and then he's saying this is a token, and this is a token, and this is another token. That's Paul's proposal.
It, yeah. And then you run your second pass, which would be
that would be the O token. The O node.
Well,
then,
I don't
then
know.
why
I
wouldn't
mean,
we
maybe
separate the
token,
$ at that point
well,
on filter?
Maybe tokenization internally does 2 passes. What I'm saying is the first pass should just be to achieve what you've got there, right? Is to say, hey, these are the tokens, just outright, these are the tokens. Then the second pass should be, okay, let's add some intelligence to this. What do we know about OData? What do we know about the spec? What do we understand as being a string literal? Because that's an OData convention, right?
This is a powerful proposal.
So what I'm saying is that second stage might not be tokenization. It might just be, apply OData conventions after tokenization to our token array. Yeah. So you'd have some sort of OData convention service or something that has a set of conventions and applies those to say, hey, okay, from my raw token values that I got from my raw URL, there's pieces of the URL that I might just say, hey, these are just completely irrelevant to OData URLs. So this second service will completely ignore those because they're not OData parameters.
So Paul basically is saying the tokenization service is errorless. It's non-judgmental. It will look at whatever you gave it, and it will try. It's PHP.
So yeah, one way of looking at it is, right, say I have a URL that has $filter in it as a parameter, okay, in my query, and then it has a second parameter which is like foo equals bar, okay. That is not an OData parameter, but the filter one clearly is. So the second service would say, okay, for all the OData parameters, I now need to further OData tokenize the tokens. So within that context, I can say, hey, I'm actually within an OData context here, so I can apply the OData conventions. But for the other parameters, I can't because they're not OData parameters unless I've extended the framework to include them as OData parameters.
What do you say, Sam? Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for adding the white space after Sam.
Come on, Sam. Yeah, go ahead.
If you do more white space after Sam, it's a lot of space.
Yep.
It would be a lot of white space token created based on Paul's suggestion. And later we will combine them together based on the OData knowledge and merge them together. I totally okay. The whole tokenized into parts, into 2 steps, right?
Yeah.
First
so what
one
I'm saying is
semantic split the string. It's just a split.
Yep.
Split using the delimiter split. Based on the convention from OData convention, for example, single quarter wrap the value as a whole parts. So we pass the split parts into we call it O node.
Mm-hmm.
So is the same between Mike and us, and I think it's okay. So we are on the same way to finish that.
Okay, so Sam seems to like it. Paul likes it. Joe, what do you think?
Paul suggested just split the whole tokenized into parts.
Yeah, he's saying don't enforce any laws, just tokenize.
Yeah,
just
it's okay.
Stick to tokenization.
I totally accept it.
The only problem I see with it is you're still going to have to set up the rules somewhere. Something's going to have to be in charge of what to split on, when to split, when not to split. So you're just offloading that somewhere else.
Yeah, you're kicking the can down the road, but
Yeah.
I would like the O node to be the one determining which combination of tokens makes sense to it. So it leaves it lets other engineers develop their own kind of O token O node services that can make sense out of the right combination. Think about this as, you know, Lego pieces, right? It's a dog for someone, it's an airplane for someone else, based on what they want. Is I think that's
So
before that, Paul, Joe, would you entertain the idea of kicking that can to the O node service?
My biggest part is we're arbitrarily just splitting up data that should be connected to each other. Possibly too
But is
early.
it connected because you're thinking OData, or is it connected because that's a universal convention?
String literals are kind of string literals in this case. I had no problem splitting up on actual nesting constructs such as the parentheses and stuff, but the string literal I don't really agree with right now. One of the ideas I had while we were talking was, why don't we have a collection of these O token conventions while processing the string? The O token conventions split the string based on its conventions and also contain the rules for defining what type that O token is going to be coming out of the end of it. That way, as we process through each character, we can actually check that character against a conventions token. If it matches, let's proceed down that path.
Paul, I can see Joe's point. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, so this is where me and Joe disagree a little bit, because his statement that a string literal is just a string literal is not true. If you define a string in C#, you wrap it in double quotes. If you define a string in OData, you wrap it in single quotes.
Yeah, that's right.
And in Java, you can do either or JavaScript, I'm sorry.
In JavaScript, yeah.
Right. So what I'm saying is the definition of a string literal depends on the context in which it's used. So I'm saying there's generic tokenize here, which is just figure out the pieces. And then there's OData tokenize, which is figure out the pieces according to OData's convention, which could be different to JavaScript tokenize, which could be another piece of our pipeline. Yeah. So I'm thinking about the lakehouse stuff that we were talking about and how we're going to build out our pipelines. And I think that the first stage in the pipeline is just break out the URL into its component parts. The second piece is then, okay, figure out which of those component parts apply in an OData context and apply some further processing to that. The third part might be, okay, from all the pieces that apply in an OData context, which I got from my OData tokenization, apply O node construction. And then from that O node model that we've got something we can build a query from, potentially. So we can build out an expression tree. But that piece of it is separate to what other things might also be in the URL that are not OData.
Then Paul, if you go that route, I'm gonna take Joe's side for a second there. Then we have absolutely no right of saying that $ filter is its own token.
The other thing that we have,
because you're already enforcing these rules. I'm sorry.
Correct. Yeah. So you might say that $ is a token and filter is a token, and then your OData conventions put them together.
Okay, Paul. Joe, if he plays this way, would that be a thing or?
So, so Paul, so if we have a name like Sam's house, so we have Sam EPS, right? The single quote
S. Sam's house like this.
Yeah. So now we have to separate that Sam is a token / a token, single quote as a token,
the token.
Is a token again.
Yes.
But for a whole thing, it's a whole thing. It's a Sam's house.
It's a whole thing in OData, but not necessarily.
But it's all whole thing for the meaning. Not only for the OData. It's a whole thing. It's a Sam's house. But if we separate them to parts, it's just Sam.
So
Ah.
this is where I was trying to say, hey, what's our scope here? From the get-go, are we purely only talking about OData? Or are we talking about something that can be used in more general pipelines that happens to have an OData piece in the middle of it? Because
Yes.
I'm looking at the latter, and I'm thinking that's what we should build for. Because if, for example, the OData standard changes, we can change the OData pieces without affecting everything that's wrapped around it. But also, the things that are wrapped around it can have a more general purpose usage to people that want to pull the library but don't care about the OData pieces.
If I can interject here,
That's it, Joe, right there. Go ahead, Joe. Go ahead.
so we're trying to solve a problem that we're not even close to getting to yet. Right now, we're just parsing a string.
Right.
So we're fixating on a synthetic barrier right now. And I think we should just keep it simple until we have a reason to get more complicated or go a different route. When we have a need for an extension point at a lower level than we're currently at, let's add it. I'm all for it. We have no reason to go any different than what we're doing right now.
So you mean limit the scope, right?
That's exactly my argument, essentially.
The problem is, the problem is usually I just say, nah, Paul, your opinion is garbage. But you two have really strong points. Like in my, usually I have a very strong compass, and I just take on, and this is one very rare situation where Joe is saying, listen, man, this thing doesn't have any meaning if you break it into smaller pieces like this. But then also Paul is saying, wait a second, we don't know who's gonna inherit this and reutilize the tokenization service, and it's doing disservice to people who want to leverage that piece of software to enforce that $sign filter is a token and Sam's house is a token. But then again, Joe goes back and says, but that's universal, dude. That has nothing to do with OData.
Yeah.
Someone way smarter than me once said to me, right? Leave all technical decisions that you can possibly make to the last possible point. That's how you get the best possible solution. So my thinking is that if I simplify my tokenization into the most generic form it can possibly be in, and then I kick the can down the road as far as I can kick it, anytime I have to make a decision, I can say, do I have to make that decision right now? Or can I make that decision further down the line? And my thinking is that we're either saying, hey, what we're targeting here is purely OData, in which case I completely agree with Joe. Or
it's
we're
not,
saying,
though. It's not.
Yeah, or we're saying there is an OData piece to this,
yeah,
but what we're working on is pre that piece, in which case I don't agree with Joe.
Okay, let's take a vote, because you guys are very smart, by the way. I just want to let you know that. This is more entertaining to me than anything, but we're gonna have to move forward, right? Let's start with Sam. Sam, which direction do you want to go? Whenever your network comes back, you seriously need to fix your network. Look at me. Fix your network, okay? Let's go. so for God's sake, Sam, do I need to go get you a router? Are you in the office, Sam?
No, today I'm at home.
Okay, fix your network. I'm serious. We need to hear your opinion, and it's cutting out and we can't get your feedback. Okay, now let's just take your vote. Do you want to go? So just so you understand, Sam, what we're arguing here, and I know I just want to visualize this for people, watching us. We're saying there is this that will produce, I'm sorry, 1 second, you guys. There is this that will produce this model. And there is the other approach that says, no, we need to make it like this. It will be filter, equal sign, name, empty, equal, empty, and then, Sam says like this as one, and then you have that's it. So this is the difference between the two. So tell me if I visualize that correctly. I'm gonna
Think
zoom
there's
in.
a white space.
Yeah, swap your E for a white space character.
You put an E on
on
Sam.
Sam. Yeah, right there.
Yeah, I don't know why I keep saying
Space.
I don't know
There you
why I
go.
keep saying same. It's just weird. But anyway, so which I need votes though. Go ahead, Sam. Go ahead, Sam. Go ahead.
Another part is we can get rid of the white space between name and equal and between equal and Sam, because
Because you're
the
already
white space,
tokenized. You're already
yeah, because
tokenized.
from the white space is no meaningful, because you put a lot of
So-
white space between name and equal.
The
Okay,
reason
okay.
why we keep the white space is so
We
that
can vote.
for testing we can relate it back to the
You need
original
to,
string.
yeah, Sam, you need to be able to revert to the original query.
When it goes
Remote
to an
is
O
okay,
node,
so
it
we
can get
add
rid
the
of
white
it.
space between the token. It's okay. So we have the meaning to do the revolt. Okay. So I will share you some example later. So
Go ahead.
can we vote ahead?
Let's start with Sam. Sam, where do you want to go?
Let's vote it ahead.
Are you determining meaning as being in an OData
Okay, let me share
context, though,
something.
Sam?
Let me share something. You can understand which one.
He has all that stuff in his head, and they're all going at the same time, but he's also trying to be inclusive and saying, okay, what does the team think? Because I'm pretty sure there is a moment in time where we're arguing about something, and Sam is like, oh, you fools, I did this before, and it didn't work out. So,
Yeah.
so zoom in a little bit, Sam, and just show us what you have. Go ahead.
How to zoom in?
Oh, just to do control and scroll the mouse, I guess. If that's, yeah, there you go. Keep going, keep going.
Nice.
Make it really, really big, Sam. There you go. Perfect.
Okay. So I just write lambda expression. It's a func. It's a lambda expression. A
Mhm.
plus b multiples 2. So I dump it.
What is that app? Oh, LinkPad? Okay,
LinkPad,
gotcha.
yeah.
Link pad.
Yeah.
So you can
Okay.
see the lambda expression, the top level node is add. Okay. Here is add. And the left part is a, and the right part is a multiple again.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing I want to mention is this is an expression. So if I add a white space here,
It will
not
ignore
the
it.
white space, a
It will,
parenthesis
oh,
here.
yep. It will create a different.
So from our point, so we will output a token for the open parenthesis and the token for the end parenthesis, right?
Yep.
However, there's no meaning about the open parenthesis. So from the expression, there's no token for the open parenthesis or the end parenthesis, but the whole structure changed.
Yep.
The top level is multiple, and the left part is add.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so here's the deal. So the open parenthesis and the parenthesis only change the procedures. There's no meaning for other things. It just changes the procedures.
Right.
It controls the nesting.
So based on there's nothing for the open parenthesis, but from the structure, the afterward structure is the O node. It's the same O
Yep.
node.
That's the node.
We
Yep.
have the information to output the lambda. So if I don't know if maybe lambda dot to string. I don't know. Maybe it can't work.
We'll see. No, it spit out the it spit out the actual string. Yeah.
It's probably going to give you the type.
Could be.
Yep.
Yeah. So you can see.
Oh, good.
Let me close this one. We have the lamp. Okay. Let me. So here's the output. So this is my lambda expression, and after the
It's
constructor,
adding its own.
there's no information about the open parenthesis and the close parenthesis. But
Sam?
in the structure, we have the information about the structure, so we can.
Sam, put
mhm.
a string literal in your lambda expression with some white space in it.
Where?
Do A plus Sam and then a space.
Put a string literal there, Sam. See that?
It cannot. There's no information about. There's no structure.
It won't work because
Operator
of
between
the
the int. Maybe
yeah
I can do like this one. String.
yeah that will work. Yep.
Let's say plus.
Yep. Nice. And then put a space there.
With space.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I can do like this one.
Sure.
Okay.
Let's
Okay,
go.
dump that.
So it's to do the same thing. Understand the logic, but if we dump the lambda out, there's no information about the open parenthesis because the structure is okay because the lambda expression has the structure. Understand the which part is the left part, which part is the right part. If it's combined using the plus, I have to add the parentheses to wrap
Okay.
the last part.
Change the single quote for a double quote inside your string literal.
This one.
Yeah.
Dump
The
it.
same thing. So it seems the top level.
Right. That has screwed up.
Yeah.
Because that has not produced what we started off with.
Interesting. Interesting.
So LinkPad has broken what we were originally given. And I'm saying, hey, the context in which something is processed is important.
Go to the
And
bottom again.
we don't know what that context is going to be until we get further down our lake house.
By the way, Sam, this thing that you're showing is supposed to
It
be
is,
the
right?
output. It's supposed to be the output of the O token, O node
node.
service.
Oh, node.
Yeah, that's the output of O node. Like that's what happens after you run O node process.
Yes.
This
I
is
mean,
fine.
And my thinking is there's two stages before we produce O nodes.
Yes.
The first stage is a raw tokenized. The second stage is an OData convention-based tokenized.
Yes.
Yep. Yep.
I just try to share something for you to reference.
Okay, Sam, let's go back to you on this. Vote.
Yeah, vote.
Yeah, what's your opinion, Sam? Shoot.
I'm the second one.
You want to go with second. So this is Sam. So Sam won. Okay. Joe.
I like the second one, and that one has the ability to morph into the convention system.
Okay.
The second one to pass into what? Into the O node service that we're going to build next.
Yeah, he's basically gonna he's gonna mush together the OData convention into okay, anyway, Paul, what do you think? What do you got?
Well,
I know where Paul is. Paul is right here. So I have to make the decision.
You're the tiebreaker.
Gee. Let me just fight Sam over something, and then Sam, would you be okay? Okay, the whole team says we really need to honor the spaces.
That's the only way we can test right
now. So for the white space, it's okay. So if we have a config to enable the white space as a
see, it always cuts
I agree with what Sam's saying in that in an OData context or in an expression tree context, certain characters perhaps don't matter as much. And you know what you need in that context is different. But I think that is an inner context that is inside what we're currently building, which is wrapped around that, which is more generalized. And I think that's what's being missed.
I have a question for Paul. What's the difference between, other than having some of your tokens be chains of characters, what's the difference between yours and just iterating over a car array?
I mean, at this level, that's basically what we're doing, right? But we're just saying in some situations, there's sets of characters that can be combined. They're obviously always going to be combinable, right? So like a word is a word.
That's the tokenization part.
Yeah. Right, a word is a word. Or if we've got like a, you know, a string of digits and a decimal place.
Even if you got rid of the types, just deciding that one character is related to the characters next to it is all we're doing. That's all we're doing.
Here's a suggestion that might kind of end the confusion, or maybe, make it even worse. We'll see.
Yeah.
Here's what I think. What do you guys think about? So this, Paul, this will put your heart at ease, I think. So what do you think about if we mush together the OData convention for URL parsing with the tokenization service, and then we can go and say, hey, this tokenization service outside of the box, this tokenization service comes in with the OData convention built in. But if anyone wants to make it more generic, they can create their own tokenization service that doesn't follow necessarily the OData convention. Would you be okay with that?
Well, what if I want
agree with that? The tokenized service, so customer can
They can make their own. Yeah.
Yes, they can make their own.
What if I want the first bit but not the second bit?
What if you want this, not this?
What if I want the tokenization service, but I don't want the OData conventions applied?
Then you can just make your own. You can make one and roll.
Yeah, I'm suggesting we make that, and then as a second stage, we do the OData tokenization.
See, the problem
then
is
they can just omit the OData bit that they don't want instead of having to build something.
we don't have any rules for that. How do we build that now?
Well, we
know what the rules are on a URL, right?
Yeah. He's saying just tokenize. He's basically saying a space is a token. URL. Yeah, a space is a. See, the thing is that this also, the risk about this approach is that means we're gonna need people to go re-implement something that we could have given them for free if we just said, hey, here's a tokenization service and here's an O-node service that will do that OData convention for you.
We're making the assumption that
about URI.
Yes, we're making the assumption that everything in that URI and everything that we want to process is always OData. And I'm saying, hey, there may be portions of this that is OData, and we want to apply our OData conventions to, but there may be also portions of it that's not OData.
Okay.
And that we still want to process in this same pipeline, but perhaps not in the OData pieces of the pipeline.
Outside of OData, yeah.
Then you would replace your tokenization conventions. So why not collect? So the tokenization service collects its tokenization conventions from somewhere else and uses those to process the string that's incoming. Those can be replaced.
If you do that, then you can have a generic tokenization service that you can say, I can have two of them, for example, in my pipeline. And one of them applies the OData conventions and one of them doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I'm fine with that.
I like the generic tokenization service approach, but I also have to get us moving forward, so
we can apply it now.
The biggest issue I've seen with most sort of big enterprisey code bases
is doing too much. Yeah.
They build really specific things.
Yeah.
And that specific thing is just not flexible.
Yeah.
So then when you want to do something that's slightly different to the specific thing, you literally have to copy the specific thing, rip out the one line of code that you don't want, and then add the two new lines of code that you do want. And so then you've got this like massive method or chain of methods that is basically all but the same, apart from a couple of lines of code. So my thinking is, in that scenario, you should have abstracted further. You should have more modular code, because then you can just inject the pieces that you want in the places that you want. And the whole point of this is that we're wrapping our lakehouse functions around it. So we can basically say, hey, I'm going to dynamically build a pipeline here, of which some of this might be OData processed. Or are we specifically targeting Neo the whole way?
Well, using this convention system that we kind of just, I visualized it in my head anyways, using this convention idea that I iterated it and everyone else did, we could do both. What Paul's saying and
so you
what
could
I'm
have
saying.
So you could have built-in conventions, or people could just pass in their own conventions.
Yeah, if you take DI, you go to the options, you go to conventions, clear, and then you add your own.
So this is why I wanted to know more about the lakehouse, right? Because a
Yeah.
tokenization service would be expected to output an array of tokens or a stream of tokens or something, right?
Hmm.
Okay, so then there's presumably going to be the next thing in the pipeline is going to say, hey, I accept a stream of tokens and I spit something else out. Okay, but what if there's two things in there that can accept the raw string that we start off with, and they both spit out a stream of tokens?
Then
but
you
they
have
spit
to
out-
you have to tell your lake house what's your priority.
Yeah, there's got to be either a weight to it or some form of identifier.
You're gonna have to set priority or set exclusivity. There's so much into that lake house stuff that I'm setting up just a special series on the side just about the freaking lake house.
Yeah, you could
See,
run them
my-
in parallel, and whichever one finishes first wins.
See, yeah, my thinking is that the lakehouse could internally have a pipeline where the next thing in the chain can say, and where it's come from, some previous piece of the chain. So you can explicitly link pieces of the chain. Then what that allows you to do is have multiple chains of things taking place at the same time, processing different parts of your original input that eventually might come together. Think of it like a workflow engine where I have a junction where I split off from one activity performing some operation into two separate activities. They go off and do their thing. Then there's two further activities that do their thing. And then the output from both of those comes back into one thing that pulls them all together. That then gets processed into, say, I don't know, a SQL query or something. Yeah. And then the result gets returned back to the users. But these different pieces, some of them might be OData and some of them might be, say, GraphQL. I don't know. Maybe we support, a portion of a GraphQL query in the URL. Or
The
maybe
one thing,
what's actually pushed in here isn't from the URL originally. Maybe it's from
so let
the
me
body.
Paul, let me just say this. Paul's approach allows for Joe's approach to exist. Joe's
Yes.
approach doesn't allow Paul's approach to exist.
Well, at that point, it's just configuration.
Right, but think about it
Not
this
quite.
way. Think about it this way. If we go Paul's route, we eventually gonna do what you just said, Joe. Eventually we're gonna go your route and basically go and say, oh, let's do these more specific targeted OData conventions. If
Yeah,
we go
Joe's route is a piece of my route.
Yep. So if we go your route, that means people gonna have to invent their own piece to do Paul's route.
Yeah.
So we're basically making engineers do more work.
Well, it depends.
I know
the
that
outcome is to tokenize. So
I know that
my
you're
route
saying
gets us doing that first.
I know that you're saying let's add in conventions there. Anyway, I have to wrap up, but can we just take a second until Wednesday to think about this because we need a vote. And I don't
Sure.
expect just think about this.
We did.
we-
We did the vote.
I'm still a little undecided. I'm trying to kind of buy myself more time because I feel like if we take that route, eventually we'll do what Joe is saying. If we do what Joe is saying, we're gonna have to go create an entire new set of conventions, which is basically the same thing. Okay, just let me think about it. Let's talk on Wednesday. Okay.
It's just changing where things live.
Yeah, this is one very rare occasion where two engineers come up with very, very strong argument that is hard to topple. Usually there is one that's really, really smart and one that's just dumb. Just plain out dumb. You know?
Why don't we POC both?
Let's connect on Wednesday. Let's see what
Yeah.
happens then. Thank you all. I
'Cause
appreciate
we
you all.
can test it. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you guys.